The 90s were an amazing time to be in the music business. There were expensive parties, album launch events, and so much happening everywhere. The massive sales of CDs from overwhelmingly popular artists like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys were making overwhelming profit. No one could have foretold how this was all about to change with just a simple idea of compressed audio, which would later be known as MP3. In today's video, allow us to take you on a trip back in time and reflect upon how impactful MP3 was for the music industry. So without further ado, let's get started. The birth of MP3 was a pivotal moment in the history of entertainment and media. No one could tell how it was about to disrupt the whole music industry. It made an enormous impact on musicians all around the world because no one was buying physical copies of music anymore. Who would in their right state of mind if they could get that for free, right? The music industry wasn't viable anymore, and it failed because of the rapid changes. The concept of MP3 changed people's relationship to the internet, culture, and the overall cogs of the society. Fraunhofer Institute is considered to be the birthplace of MP3. Karl-Heinz Bardenberg was the co-inventor of MP3 and often considered as the father of MP3. The story began in West Germany in the late 70s. Compression of music was a concept people were familiar with. A fine German gentleman called Dieter Seitzer was the visionary who came up with the idea of MP3. He noticed the digitization of music with a CD and thought to himself, why don't we just store all the data in one centralized computer and then stream it to people? Which is why he applied for a patent to use the phone system to transmit music. The idea originated in 1982. But they had a huge problem considering how an average CD took about 1 million bits of information to store only 1 second of audio. And the telephone line they were trying to use could only do about 128,000 bits per second. For his idea to work, he had no other options than to reduce the size of the data from the disk by at least 90%, which was deemed to be impossible. But around the late 80s, Dieter's star student Brandenburg made a breakthrough. He studied psychoacoustics and realized how the human ear had a handful of flaws. For example, two tones which were similar together in pitch were hard to differentiate and would cancel each other out, which made him realize how most of the intricate audio details you'd get from a compact disc were not discernible to most ears. Fast forwarding to 1995, Fraunhofer posted a shareware version of its MP3 coding software on the internet, which had very limited functionality. There was a serial number method where you had to buy and punch it to unlock full access. Around 98, everyone started listening to free music on their computer, especially teenagers. Collecting music on the MP3 version quickly became a pastime activity for a lot of people. Dan Surif, a former MP3 pirate, was the founder of the MP3 piracy group titled Audio Punks, who specialized in multiple genres of music. They had downloaders from all over the world. Back in the 90s, if you wanted to find these MP3 files, you had to be in an IRC channel, which was super exclusive, invite-only chat rooms. They had a ratio system, where if someone had to download one song, in return they had to upload two. Back then, it was considered as file sharing, and not piracy. In the late 90s, the staff of the Recording Industry Association of America, most commonly known as RIAA, started to monitor the internet to realize the rise of MP3. They didn't consider it a threat in the early days, but they saw it as an opportunity. They started calling the idea a celestial jukebox, which was a theoretical construct. It was an idea that every song ever made will be available on the cloud, right underneath our fingertips. But it was a missed opportunity by the industry. The former executive of Sony Music Group, Rick Dobus, says he didn't realize the importance of the whole concept. Considering the digital revolution, every company had only one question in mind: how would they use this to their advantage? Sony played their hand by trying to legalize the download process for the first time by adding a price tag. According to the major music industries, the computer was only made for crunching numbers and making spreadsheets. The companies who tried to collaborate with the music industry had trouble expressing how it could be beneficial for them, as they had no idea how the record business worked. This is the time where peer-to-peer came and changed everything. In 1999, people realized file sharing was really fun but complicated. Sean Fanning and Sean Parker then created the legendary app called Napster. They were two teenagers hanging around the aforementioned IRC chat rooms exchanging MP3 files. Back then, the MP3 files were available, but there weren't any central indexes from where they could download them easily. That's when Fanning proposed the idea of a new technology, which would connect these files together, a P2P server. It's basically a technology where multiple computers have access to each other's files, making it the ultimate trading tool. Sean Parker acted as the force of the organization, where Fanning wrote the code and dealt with technical issues. It was the first computer program he ever wrote. When RIAA discovered Napster, they realized the idea of their central jukebox was revived. They called Fanning and Parker and informed them how their work was infringing on copyright, but they wouldn't budge. Napster became immensely popular overnight. In a RIAA board meeting held at the Four Seasons Hotel, LA in February 2000, in that meeting they realized that every single song they had ever produced, be that hit or miss, was available on Napster. On a question of morality, most people didn't feel like it was stealing, but sharing. When it was possible for people to get music for free, there was a lot of concern about its moral code. When Napster hit, it wasn't only an issue for the music industry, but a global issue considering that teenagers learned how to do the same thing with movies on DVDs. With time, any kind of media you'd be able to play on the computer was being made free to everyone. However, for the independent artists, Napster was a good thing because it gave them exposure, as they wouldn't have to sign a record deal to release their music. But it wasn't so good for the major league artists, as it directly affected their revenue. Lars Ulrich, the drummer of Metallica, along with his bandmates, made a movement against Napster, saying how it was illegal and filed lawsuits against its creator for copyright infringement. Napster was like a symbol of freedom to all music lovers, and Ulrich's movement was a direct attack on said freedom. On December 7, 1999, RIAA officially filed suit against Napster for facilitating copyright infringement. The trial took place at San Francisco on 3 May 2000. Napster argued how they personally don't share any files. Therefore, they should not be held accountable for their actions. RIAA strongly declined, insisting how this was a theft of intellectual property. In the end, the judge ruled Napster was guilty of intellectual theft, which left Napster bankrupt. It would have been considered a very dark day for music lovers all over the world, until dozens of apps similar to Napster started emerging all over the internet. They had names like My Napster, Navigator, etc. Having no centralized server, it was incredibly difficult for the law to address and shut them down. The answer to this piracy was to give the people what they wanted, but in a legitimate way with a fair and reasonable price. This is when people felt the need of an online music store. The labels which tried this idea failed miserably. People from the music industry said how the users were promoting piracy, whereas the tech guys debated how the industry needed to go for a more stable business model. Only one person was able to act as a bridge between this gap, and that person was none other than Steve Jobs. The Mac products only represented 3% of the market share, but he had a mission of bringing this company around. When he introduced the iPod in 2001, he saw a great opportunity in the music space for Apple. In 2002, Steve Jobs announced to RIAA how he was about to create an online music store. In a meeting with them, Steve displayed the inner workings of the iTunes store. Its simplicity made it brilliant, and the fact that it worked better than anything anyone has seen before acted as their savior. Steve Jobs wanted every song on iTunes to cost only $1. He didn't want a single album on the store which you couldn't break down into singles, which had a serious impact on the music industry who wanted to sell whole albums. The fans were really happy with this, and declared how this was what they've been waiting for a long time. CD sales had dropped down almost 1/4 in just 3 years. Buyers got fed up with paying for the full album where they only loved 2 or 3 songs, which made iTunes very viable. This made a lot of artists take their product off the platform. With the sales slipping, the industry shifted their attention back to people who pirated music, which created a lot of controversy. In protest, the head of RIAA, Hillary Rosen, resigned. This situation made people all over the world hate RIAA, and for this reason, even more people got on board the pirate ship. The industry over the course of 15 years shrank significantly. When they were under threat, the industry decided to merge itself with other music enterprises, which eliminated a lot of jobs for the common people. Around the mid-2000s, piracy was still a huge problem. Everyone had moved to torrents, which is where the people used to get music. The industry was preoccupied with P2P and illegal theft, and had to think of a new strategy to survive. All of these issues with piracy gave birth to a small idea, which popped inside the head of Daniel Ek, a CEO of a torrent company, which made him conjure up a plan to make people go legit again with his business model he called Spotify. He talked to all the labels and wanted them to give his service a chance. The industry had learned from their previous mistakes, and gave him a chance to solve this issue. Physical sales were over, whereas the idea of streaming was taking over. The idea reincarnated the music business like a cure for fever. The MP3 now is an obsolete technology. However, did you know whenever you're streaming music on your phone nowadays, you're using the same technique Brandenburg pioneered back in the 80s? MP3 created more value than it destroyed with its chain of events. The idea of a celestial jukebox was finally a reality, and it all happened because of MP3. We hope you enjoyed your trip back in time. What are your opinions on the MP3? Were you one of the people who used Napster? Please let us know in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this on your feed.